Sound check.
Sound check.
Sound check.
Sound check.
Good morning, Mac. Struggling with the software today. Let's do another sound check. Oh, sound check. You could call it a cool Dio? I don't understand. How's my sound, Mac? How's my sound? It's not horrible. Sweet. Alrighty, hello. Somebody that I values their opinion of recommended I read VALIS. I'm excited to read VALIS. That's why my title is, I don't know what my title is. Anyway, so we're doing a couple of things. I'll be reading VALIS out loud because I was going to read VALIS anyway. Anybody that wants to stop by and chat about whatever. You might be able to divert my attention to something else. It's okay if that happens. Also, if you want a free blessing while you're here, I'll be sure to give you one. In between reading, just feel free to ask for it in the chat. A lot of people don't know this cool trick, but you'll notice here, this is the third verse of the first chapter of Revelation. Oh, hi, Aster. Welcome. Revelations chapter 1 verse 3 says, "Blessed is he that readeth," that would be me, "and they that hear the words of this prophecy," that would be you, "and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand." Hello, SB. Wow, all kinds of cool visitors. Cool. I agree. I'm lucky you're here. So today, I'll just be repeating myself. I'm going to start reading VALIS in a minute. If anyone wants, I'm going to give myself a personal revelation. If anyone else would like a personal revelation, I'd be happy to spin the wheel for you as well. But I'll do mine first, and you can see how it works. We'll see what I get today. So step one is to spin the wheel. Let's see, can you see the wheel? Yeah. I don't do it very often. It's just something I'm trying out. But sometimes when I want to read something anyway, I'll read it online. Kind of keep a permanent record of it, and other people can listen later. Or I can listen to it in the old folks' home. That might be fun. Cool. I'll do you next, Aster. Okay, I got chapter 17. And that area right there is chapter 17. So then I look on my chart. Chapter 17 has 18 verses. So I'll have to use a 20-sided die. And then I'll be rolling the 20-sided die to see which verse. Which was it? Oh yeah, chapter 17. And then it's your personal revelation for the day. How fun. Don't take it too seriously. Make it fun. So there's Revelation chapter 17. I'll spin the die. You'll take my word for it. Oh, it landed on verse 1. Let's see what my personal revelation for today is. And there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Alrighty, I'll have to ponder my personal revelation. It sounds good, though. I'm going to get shown the judgment of the great whore. Good one, Mag. Okay, now the one thing you have to do, Aster, because then you get to play a role as well. You type it in the chat. You can either pick red and white, or you can pick black and gold. And that way you have a role in your personal revelation as well. Hooray! Gold. All right, black and gold for Aster. This is Aster's spin. Your personal revelation for today. You got chapter 18, Aster. So we open up chapter 18. It has 24 verses, so we grab the 24-sided black and gold die. Verse 19. Make sure I get it right. Oh yeah, chapter 18, verse 19. And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her coastlines. For in 1 hour is she made desolate. It's an interesting one. You'll have to think about that and ask the Holy Spirit what it means, because I don't know. If anyone else would like their personal revelation, feel free to type either black and gold or red and white in the chat, and I'll spin your wheel for you. Okay, we're going to do Sergeant. Does SVT, is that like, oh, it wouldn't be Sergeant. I've been curious about what the SVT Drew is. Yes, do. All right, let's do SVT Drews. First, we'll spin the wheel. That is 18 as well. Wow, back-to-back 18s. Let's see which color you asked for. Standard variant temperature. Oh, very cool, Drew. Drew wants the red die. 24-sided. There's your die. Verse 2. That'd been crazy if it was the same verse. Same chapter, though. Here is your verse, Drew, your personal revelation for today. You'll have to consult the Holy Spirit for its meaning. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Wow. Cool revelations. Alrighty. I'm going to start reading VALIS by Philip K. Dick. Cool. The official opening. Now, what are hateful birds? That's a good question. VALIS is actually, I guess, the second one in this thing. I'll read the back of this real quick. In the final phase of his now celebrated career, Philip K. Dick moved increasingly beyond the conventions of the sci-fi genre to probe his imaginative obsessions in idiocentric, idio. You know, I feel like I know this word. I hear people say it all this time. Idiosyncratic. New ways. I don't know that word. The novels included in this volume are A Maze of Death, written in 1970. Going to skip that one. VALIS, written in 1981. Reading that one right now. And then there's The Divine Invasion from 1981. The Transmigration of Timothy Archer in 82. They chart an experimental and uniquely Dickian. Hadn't thought about that because there's Charles Dickinson too. An experimental and uniquely Dickian literary territory held by aficionados as his most searching and profound. I'm a little bit scared there's going to be big words in this book that I'm going to struggle with. Written in astonishing burst of creative energy, they fuse personal confession, theological speculation, and reflections on the contemporary scene. Of course, the contemporary scene would be of the 70s. Above all, they explore the nature of religious revelation. It's almost like it's tied into this show. It's sometimes blinding truths, and it's sometimes dark human consequences, in a key that marks Dick as an impeccable American visionary. Well, that sounds cool. Nice quote, Aster. Struggle is the parent of learning. I like it. I love when the Bible connects people. Boy, that's nice too. Hateful bird, maybe a goose. Yes, I have seen some hateful gooses or geese. They're good defenders. Yeah. All right. Without further ado, not there's anything wrong with ado. Ado's great. I'm either going to have to read this like this, which is uncomfortable, or I'm going to have to take my glasses off and hold it really close to my face, and that's okay. Because I'm too cheap to buy good glasses, I guess. Since you guys won't be able to see the book, I'll probably mention the page number or something while I'm reading it. Page number is not going to be helpful to people, though. I didn't put my glasses on and see the chat. What fun. In my old streaming days. Did you used to stream, Drew? The wheels on the struggle bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. I don't really need this up anymore, but it doesn't hurt anything. To Russell Gallen, who showed me the right way. Wow. That's amazing. I wonder who this Russell Gallen is. Does anyone know the right way? That's amazing. VALIS is acronym of Vast Active Living Intelligence System, from an American film. A perturbation in the reality field in which a spontaneous, self-monitoring negentropic vortex. I apologize for all of the horrible mispronounced words that will occur. I'll just do my best. negentropic vortex is formed, tending progressively to subsume and incorporate its environment into arrangements of information, characterized by quasi-consciousness, purpose, intelligence, growth, and an armillary coherence. The Great Soviet Dictionary, 6th edition, 1992. I honestly don't even know if this is made up or not. I don't know if VALIS was something from the American film. I'll have to look that up later. I see there's some comments. I have to stop periodically and see what these are. Oh, wow, streamed for 5 years. Then my awakening pulled my attention from everything. Love really runs the show now. Only humans. Well, Drew, I appreciate your support on some of my videos and comments. I didn't know that you had an awakening 5 years ago. That sounds cool. Chapter 1, Reading VALIS by Philip K. Dick. Horse lover Fats. I guess that's someone's name. Horse lover Fats? Nervous breakdown began the day he got the phone call from Gloria. Oh, good. These are like shorter, easier words, thank goodness. Horse lover Fats' nervous breakdown began the day he got the phone call from Gloria. I know Gloria. Asking if he had any Nimbutals. He asked her why she wanted them, and she said that she intended to kill herself. What a delightful start. She was calling everyone she knew. By now she had 50 of them, but she needed 30 or 40 more to be on the safe side. That's funny. At once, horse lover Fat leapt to the conclusion that this was her way of asking for help. It had been Fat's delusion for years that he could help people. That sounds familiar as well. His psychiatrist once told him that to get well, he would have to do two things: get off dope, which he hadn't done, and to stop trying to help people. This is awesome. He still tried to help people. All right, I gotta catch up on the comments. This book's awesome. Oh, me too, Mac. Stately, plump Buck Mulligan. Yes, this is very awesome, Mac. I'm sure lucky someone recommended this book. As a matter of fact, he had no Nimbutals. He had no sleeping pills of any sort. He never did sleeping pills. Wow, and I've heard sleeping pills brought up recently too. So interesting. He did uppers. So giving Gloria sleeping pills by which she could kill herself was beyond his power. Anyhow, he wouldn't have done it if he could. I have 10, he said, because if he told her the truth, she would hang up. Then I'll drive up to your place, Gloria said in a rational, calm voice, the same tone in which she had asked for the pills. He realized then that she was not asking for help. She was trying to die. She was completely crazy. If she were sane, she would realize that it was necessary to veil her purpose, because this way she made him guilty of complicity. For him to agree, he would need to want her dead. Wow, this Mr. Dick's getting right into it. This is a serious book, I see. And I like that our main character, I love books where where we get to not just see what people are doing and saying, but we get to hear what some of the characters are processing in their head. I love books like that. He realized then that she was not asking for help. She was trying to die. She was completely crazy. If she were sane, she would realize that it was necessary to veil her purpose, because this way she made him guilty of complicity. For him to agree, he would need to want her dead. No motive existed for him, or anyone, to want that. Gloria was gentle and civilized, but she dropped a lot of acid. The book's got a lot of drugs. It was obvious that the acid, since he had last heard from her 6 months ago, had since wrecked her mind. What have you been doing? Fat asked. I've been in Mount Zion Hospital in San Francisco. I tried suicide and my mother committed me. They discharged me last week. Are you cured? He said. Yes, she said. That's when Fat began to go nuts. At the time, he didn't know it, but he had been drawn into an unspeakable psychological game. There was no way out. Gloria Cudson had wrecked him, her friend, along with her own brain. Probably she had wrecked 6 or 7 other people, all friends who loved her along the way with similar phone conversations. She had undoubtedly destroyed her mother and father as well. Fat heard in her rational tone the harp of nihilism, the twang of the void. He was not dealing with a person. He had a reflex arc thing at the other end of the phone line. What he did not know then is that it is sometimes an appropriate response to reality to go insane. To listen to Gloria rationally ask to die was to inhale the contagion. It was a Chinese finger trap, where the harder you pull to get out, the tighter the trap gets you. Where are you now? He asked. Probably not that harshly. Where are you now? He asked. Modesto, at my parents' home. Since he lived in Marin County, she was several hours' drive away. Few inducements would have gotten him to make such a drive. This was another serving up of lunacy. 3 hours' drive each way for 10 Nimbutals. Why not just total the car? Gloria was not even committing her irrational acts rationally. Thank you, Tim Leary, Fat thought. I think Tim Leary either invented or popularized acid or is associated with acid. Editor's note. Thank you, Tim Leary, Fat thought. You and your promotion of the joy of expanded consciousness through dope. We don't use the word dope a lot anymore, but I guess we did back then. Dope. That's dope, man. He did not know his own life was on the line. This was 1971. So Philip Dick is writing a book that he released in 1981, and it looks like right now it's taking place in 1971. Let's see if there's anything I need to respond to in the chat. Oh, okay, cool. Thank you for the, what do you call those things? Annotations. Mac has added a LSD annotation for us. We appreciate it. He did not know his own life was on the line. This was 1971. I'm not going to disclose my exact age, but I existed in the 70s and the 80s as some sort of, 70 and 80s, that's kind of giving it away. Anyway, I was born close to 1971, 1972. He did not know his own life was on the line. This was 1971. In 1972, he would be up north in Vancouver, British Columbia, involved in trying to kill himself. Dang, only 1 year. That's called foreshadowing. In 1972, he would be up north in Vancouver, British Columbia, involved in trying to kill himself. Alone, poor, and scared in a foreign city. Right now, he was spared that knowledge. All he wanted to do was coax Gloria up to Marin County so he could help her. One of God's greatest mercies is that he keeps us perpetually occluded. Wow, I don't really want to have to slow the reading down with looking words up. Thanks, Drew. I don't usually do lives, by the way, but if you go into my channel page sometime in the future, if you're interested, I have done some lives, and I built that wheel live. It took me about 8 hours. And I also built a mechanical flying dragon live and some other things with erector sets. And I've read some of the books of the Bible live and a few other books. No, don't apologize. You're doing great. Sorry, chat's my first time. I don't know what you're sorry for, but I bet he did. Yeah, indeed. Let's continue reading. No, I don't have a schedule, unfortunately. We'll see. I intend to read this entire book live over a series of several days when I'm in the mood. Thank you. Thank you for your interest, seriously. This is a good book, by the way. I'm already so into it. I might read for a few hours today. I'm probably going to have to add a suicide warning to this video when I publish it because of the topic. One of God's greatest mercies is that he keeps us perpetually occluded. I don't know what occluded means. I want to think maybe it means in the dark from the context. I'm going to pester anyone to look up words for me, but I'm going to, without crashing anything, OCCULD, occluded. Stop, close up, or obstructed. Yeah, so it sounds like the Bible verse, well, God locks up all in stubbornness or something. Or we're all blind or we're all deaf. More or less what occluded means. One of God's greatest mercies is that he keeps us perpetually occluded. In 1976, totally crazy with grief, horse lover Fat would slit his wrist. The Vancouver suicide attempt having failed. Take 49 tablets of high-grade digitalis and sit in a closed garage with his car motor running and fell there too. Well, the body has powers unknown to the mind. However, Gloria's mind had total control over her body. She was rationally insane. Most insanity can be identified with the bizarre and the theatrical. You put a pan on your head and a towel around your waist, paint yourself purple, and go outdoors. That sounds fun. Gloria was as calm as she had ever been, polite and civilized. If she had lived in ancient Rome or Japan, she would have gone unnoticed. Her driving skills probably remained unimpaired. She would stop at every red light and not exceed the speed limit on her trip to pick up the 10 Nimbutals. I am horse lover fat. What a strange name. I am horse lover fat, and I am writing this in the third person to gain much needed objectivity. I did not love Gloria Cudson, but I liked her. In Berkeley, she and her husband had given elegant parties, and my wife and I always got invited. Gloria spent several hours fixing little sandwiches and served different wines, and she dressed up and looked lovely with her sandy-colored, short-cut, curly hair. Anyhow, Horse Lover Fat had no Nibitol to give her, and a week later Gloria threw herself out of a 10th floor window of the Synanon building in Oakland, California, and smashed herself to bits on the pavement along MacArthur Boulevard. Such beautiful imagery for you all this morning. And Horse Lover Fat continued his insidious long decline into misery and illness, the sort of chaos that astrophysicists say is the fate in store for the whole universe. Fat was ahead of his time, ahead of the universe. Eventually, he forgot what event had started off his decline into entropy. God mercifully occludes us. There's the old occlude again. God mercifully occludes us to the past as well as the future. For 2 months after he learned of Gloria's suicide, he cried and watched TV and took more dope. His brain was going too, but he didn't know it. Infinite are the mercies of God. Wow. Catch up on my chat. I appreciate you stopping by, Aster. I hope you come see us again. Cool, cool. Yeah, you can watch it when it's not live and play it on like 1.25 or whatever. As a matter of fact, Fat had lost his own wife the year before to mental illness. It was like a plague. No one could discern how much was due to drugs. This time in America, 1960 to 1970, and this place, the Bay Area of Northern California, was totally fucked. Might be the first time I said that word live on the air, but you know, I'm reading a book. I'm sorry to tell you this, but that's the truth. Fancy terms and ornate theories cannot cover this fact up. The authorities became as psychotic as those they hunted. They wanted to put all persons who were not clones of the establishment away. The authorities were filled with hate. Fat had seen police glower at him with the ferocity of dogs. The day they moved Angela Davis, the black Marxist, out of the Marion County Jail, the authorities dismantled the whole, it's actually Marin County Jail. I used to live close to Marion County in Indiana. Out of the Marin County Jail, the authorities dismantled the whole civic center. This was to baffle radicals who might intend trouble. The elevators got unwired. Doors got relabeled with spurious information. The district attorney hid. Fat saw all of this. He had gone to the Civic Center that day to return a library book. At the electronic hoop at the Civic Center entrance, 2 cops had ripped open the book and papers that Fat carried. He was perplexed. The whole day perplexed him. In the cafeteria, an armed cop watched everyone eat. Fat returned home by cab, afraid of his own car and wondering if he was nuts. He was, but so was everyone else. looks like all is well. I am, by profession, a science fiction writer. I deal in fantasies. My life is a fantasy. Nonetheless, Gloria Cudson lies in a box in Modesto, California. There's a photo of her funeral wreath in my photo album. It's a color photo so you can see how lovely the wreaths are. In the background, a Volkswagen is parked. I can be seen crawling into the Volkswagen. In the midst of the surface, I am not able to take any more. After the graveside service, Gloria's former husband, Bob, and I had some tearful friends of his. Yeah. After the graveside service, I apologize. After the graveside service, Gloria's former husband, Bob, and I, and some tearful friends of his and hers, had a late lunch at a fancy restaurant in Modesto near the cemetery. The waitress seated us in the rear because the three of us looked like hippies, even though we had suits and ties on. We didn't give a shit. I don't remember what we talked about. The night before, Bob and Bob and horse lover Fat, drove to Oakland to see the movie Patton. Just before the graveside service, Fat met Gloria's parents for the first time. Like their deceased daughter, they treated him with utmost civility. A number of Gloria's friends stood around the corny California ranch-style living room, recalling the person who linked them together. Naturally, Miss Cudson wore too much makeup. Women always put on too much makeup when someone dies. Fat petted the dead girl's cat, Chairman Mayo. He remembered the few days Gloria had spent with him upon her futile trip to his house for the Nebutol, which he did not have. She greeted the disclosure of his lie with aplomb, even a neutrality. When you are going to die, you do not care about small things. I took them, Fat told her, lie upon lie. They decided to drive to the beach, the great ocean beach of the Point Reyes, Pennsylvania. In Gloria's Volkswagen, with Gloria driving, it never entered his mind that she might, on impulse, wipe out him, herself, and the car. And an hour later, set together on the sand, smoking dope. Smoking dope. It certainly seems so, Mac. Thank you. It's a delightful book. If only you know who recommended it. Only. What Fat wanted to know most of all was why she intended to kill herself. Gloria had on many times washed jeans and a t-shirt with Mick Jagger's leering face across the front of it. Because the sand felt nice, she took off her shoes. Fat noticed that she had pink painted toenails and that they were perfectly pedicured. To himself, he thought, she died as she lived. They stole my bank account, Gloria said. After a time, he realized from her measured, lucidly stated narration that no, they existed. Gloria unfolded a panorama of total and relentless madness, lapidary in construction. There's another word I don't know, Lapidary, lapidary in construction. I'm going to think it means layered in construction. She had filled in all the details with tools as precise as dental tools. No vacuum existed anywhere in her account. He could find no error except, of course, for the premise, which was that everyone hated her, was out to get her, and she was worthless in every respect. As she talked, she began to disappear. He watched her go. It was amazing. Gloria, in her measured way, talked herself out of existence, word by word. It was rationality at the service of, well, he thought at the service of non-being. Her mind had become one great expert eraser. All that really remained now was her husk, which is to say her uninhabited corpse. She is dead now, he realized that day on the beach. After they had smoked up all their dope, they walked along and commented on seaweed and the height of waves. Seagulls croaked by overhead, selling themselves like frisbees. A few people sat or walked here and there, but mostly the beach was deserted. Signs warned of undertow. Fat, for the life of him, could not figure out why Gloria didn't simply walk out into the surf. He simply could not get into her head. All she could think of was the Nimbutol she still needed or imagined she needed. My favorite Dead album is Working Man's Dead, Gloria said at one point, but I don't think they should advocate taking cocaine. A lot of kids listen to rock. They don't advocate it. The song's just about someone taking it, and it killed him indirectly. He smashed up his train. But that's why I started on drugs, Gloria said. Because of the Grateful Dead? Because, Gloria said, everyone wanted me to do it. I'm tired of doing what other people want me to do. Don't kill yourself, Fat said. Move in with me. I'm all alone. I really like you. Try it for a while at least. We'll move your stuff up, me and my friends. There's lots of things we can do, like go places, like to the beach today. Isn't it nice here? To that, Gloria said nothing. It would really make me feel terrible, Fat said, for the rest of my life if you did away with yourself. Thereby, as he later realized, he presented her with all the wrong reasons for living. She would be doing it as a favor to others. He could not have found a worse reason to give had he looked for years. Better to back the Volkswagen over her. Dark, man. This is why suicide hotlines are not manned by nitwits. Fat learned this later in Vancouver when, suicidal himself, he phoned the British Columbia Crisis Center and got expert advice. There was no correlation between this and what he told Gloria on the beach that day. Pausing to rub a small stone loose from her foot, Gloria said, I'd like to stay overnight at your place tonight. Hearing this, Fat experienced involuntary visions of sex. Far out, he said, which was the way he talked in those days. The counterculture possessed a whole book of phrases which bordered on meaning nothing. Fat used to string a bunch of them together. He did so now, deluded by his own carnality, into imagining that he had saved his friend's life. His judgment, which wasn't worth much anyhow, dropped to a new nadir of acuity. The existence of a good person hung in the balance, hung in a balance which Fat held, and all he could think of now was the prospect of scoring. All he could think of now is the prospect of scoring. I can dig it, he prattled away as they walked. Out of sight, man. A few days later, she was dead. They spent that night together, sleeping fully dressed. They did not make love. The next afternoon, Gloria drove off, ostensibly to get her stuff from her parents' house in Modesto. He never saw her again. For several days, he waited for her to show up, and then one night, the phone rang, and it was her ex-husband, Bob. "Where are you right now?" Bob asked. The question bewildered him. He was at home, where his phone was, in the kitchen. Bob sounded calm. "I'm here," Fat said. "Gloria killed herself today," Bob said. "I have a photo of Gloria holding Chairman Mayo in her arms. Gloria is kneeling and smiling, and her eyes shine. Chairman Mayo is trying to get down. To her left, part of a Christmas tree can be seen. On the back, Miss Cudson has written in tiny letters how we made her feel gratitude for our love. I've never been able to fathom whether Miss Cudson wrote that after Gloria's death or before. The Cudsons mailed me the photo a month, mailed Horse Lover Fat the photo a month, after Gloria's funeral. Fat had written asking for a photo of her. Initially, he had asked Bob, who replied in a savage tone, "What do you want a picture of Gloria for?" To which Fat could give no answer. When Fat got me started writing this, he asked me why I thought Bob Langley got so mad at his request. I don't know. I don't care. Maybe Bob knew that Gloria and Fat had spent a night together and he was jealous. Fat used to say Bob Langley was a schizoid. He claimed that Bob himself told him that. A schizoid, lacks proper effect to go with his thinking. He's got what's called flattening of effect. A schizoid would see no reason not to tell you that about himself. On the other hand, Bob bent down after the graveside service and put a rose on Gloria's coffin. That was about when Fat had gone crawling off to the Volkswagen. Which reaction is more appropriate? Fat weeping in the parked car by himself, or the ex-husband bending down with the rose, saying nothing, showing nothing, but doing something? Fat contributed nothing to the funeral except a bundle of flowers which he had belatedly bought on the trip down to Modesto. He had given them to Miss Cudson, who remarked that they were lovely. Bob had picked them out. After the funeral, at the fancy restaurant where the waitress had moved the three of them out of view, Fat asked Bob what Gloria had been doing at Cinnamon, since she was supposed to be getting her possessions together and driving back up to Marin County to live with him, he had thought. Carmina talked her into going to Cinnamon, Bob said. That was Miss Cudson, because of her history of drug involvement. Timothy, the friend Fat didn't know, said they sure didn't help her very much. What had happened was that Gloria walked in the front door of Cinnamon, and they had gamed her right off. Someone on purpose had walked past her as she sat waiting to be interviewed and had remarked on how ugly she was. The next person to parade past had informed her that her hair looked like something a rat slept in. Gloria had always been sensitive about her curly hair. She wished it was long like all the other hair in the world. What the third Cinnamon member would have said was moot, because by then Gloria had gone upstairs to the 10th floor. Is that how Cinnamon works? Fat asked. Bob said, it's a technique to break down the personality. It's a fascist therapy that makes the person totally outer directed and dependent on the group. Then they can build up a new personality that isn't drug oriented. Didn't they realize she was suicidal? Timothy asked. Of course, Bob said. She phoned in and talked to them. They knew her name and why she was there. Did you talk to them after her death? Fat asked. Bob said, I phoned them up and asked to talk to someone high up, and I told them they had killed my wife. And the man said that they wanted me to come down there and teach them how to handle suicidal people. He was super upset. I felt sorry for him. At that, hearing that, Fat decided that Bob himself was not right in the head. Bob felt sorry for Synonym. Bob was all fucked up. Everyone was fucked up, including Carmina Cudson. There wasn't a sane person left in Northern California. It was time to move somewhere else. He sat eating his salad and wondered where he could go. Out of the country? Flee to Canada like the draft protesters? He personally knew 10 guys who had slipped across into Canada rather than fight in Vietnam. Probably in Vancouver, he would run into half a dozen people he knew. Vancouver was supposed to be one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Like San Francisco, it was a major port. He could start life all over and forget the past. It entered his head as he sat fooling with his salad that when Bob phoned, he hadn't said Gloria killed herself, but rather Gloria killed herself today, as if it had been inevitable that she would do it one day or another. Perhaps this had done it, this assumption. Gloria had been timed as if she were taking a math test. Who really was the insane one? Gloria or himself? Probably himself. Or her ex-husband and all of them. The Bay Area, not insane in the loose sense of the term, but in the strict technical sense. Let it be said that one of the first symptoms of psychosis is that the person feels perhaps he is becoming psychotic. It is another Chinese finger trap. You cannot think about it without becoming part of it. By thinking about madness, horse lover Fat slipped by degrees into madness. I wish I could have helped him. That is the end of chapter 1 of this delightful book. Now, Mac the Human has told us switching between first and third person is not accidental. I did notice he was doing that. He did it just him. I wish I could have helped him. The him is the horse lover Fat is saying that horse lover Fat wishes that horse lover Fat could have helped horse lover Fat. And I think Matt is giving us some good information or foreshadowing about, I said Matt, but I meant Mac. Information or foreshadowing about the importance of when he speaks in first person or third person. Very cool. All right, I'm going to take a 5-minute break, and then I'm going to read chapter 2. Looks like everything's still operational on the computer. Cool. Restroom. And I'll be back for chapter 2. Oh, thanks, Mac. Very cool, Mike. All right, beginning chapter 2 of VALIS by Philip K. Dick. Delightful novel so far. Well, it's got a lot of suicide talk, but it's delightful, and I'm sure we're going to learn some cool things about stuff. Although there was nothing I could do to help Horselover Fat, he did escape death. The first thing that came along to save him took the form of an 18-year-old high school girl living down the street from him. And the second was God. Of the two of them, the girl did better. I'm not sure God did anything at all for him. In fact, in some ways, God made him sicker. That was a subject on which Fat and I could not agree. This was a subject on which... Well, this is interesting because now this is a subject on which Fat, which is the author of the book, I thought, and I, which is also the author of the book, could not agree. So he must be splitting into two personalities. Fat was certain that God had healed him completely. That is not possible. There is a line in the I Ching reading, always ill but never dies. That fits my friend. Stephanie entered Fat's life as a dope dealer. I live in Washington, and it is like, I grew up with there being dope dealers in Indiana, but you know, it's still trippy to me. I can walk into a store and just buy dope. It's crazy. Things change, and some things don't. Stephanie entered Fat's life as a dope dealer. After Gloria's death, he did so much dope that he had to buy from every source available to him. Buying dope from high school kids is not a smart move. It has nothing to do with dope itself, but with the law and with morality. Once you begin to buy dope from kids, you are a marked man. I'm sure it's obvious why. They both shut off at the same time. Interesting. Let me see if Mac's did anything. Nope, Mac's still sawing the board. Once you begin buying dope from kids, you are a marked man. I'm sure it's obvious why. But the thing I knew, which the authorities did not, is this. Horselover Fat really wasn't interested in the dope that Stephanie had for sale. She dealt hash and grass, but never uppers. She did not approve of uppers. Stephanie never sold anything she did not approve of. She never sold psychedelics no matter what pressure was put on her. Now and then she sold cocaine. Yeah, cocaine's an upper. Nobody could quite figure out her reasoning, but it was a form of reasoning. In the normal sense, Stephanie did not think at all. But she did arrive at decisions, and once she arrived at them, no one could budge her. Fat liked her. There lay the gist of it. He liked her and not the dope, but to maintain a relationship with her, he had to be a buyer, which meant he had to do hash. For Stephanie, hash was the beginning and the end of life worth living anyhow. If God came in a poor second, at least he wasn't doing anything illegal. It's interesting thinking about God doing something illegal. Although I guess they accused Jesus of doing illegal things. It's not that, I guess it's not surprising at all. If God came in a poor second, at least he wasn't doing anything illegal, as Stephanie was. Fat was convinced that Stephanie would wind up in jail. He expected her to be arrested any day. All Fat's friends expected him to be arrested any day. We worried about that and about his slow decline into depression and psychosis and isolation. Fat worried about Stephanie. Stephanie worried about the price of hash. More so, she worried about the price of cocaine. We used to imagine her suddenly sitting bolt upright in the middle of the night and exclaiming, "Coke has gone up to $100 a gram!" She worried about the price of dope the way normal women worry about the price of coffee. Coffee is dope, man. We used to argue that Stephanie could not have existed before the 60s. Dope had brought her into being, summoned her out of the very ground. She was a coefficient of dope, part of an equation. And yet it was through her that Fat made his way eventually to God. Not through her dope. It had nothing to do with the dope. There is no door to God through dope. That is a lie peddled by the unscrupulous. I'm kind of curious. Like, Mac's building something, probably. He's sawing a board. He's probably going to build something. Maybe a birdhouse. Mac might be building a birdhouse. It's possible. It's possible. There is no door to God through dope. That is a lie peddled by the unscrupulous. The means by which Stephanie brought horse lover Fat to God was by means of a little clay pot, which she threw on her kick wheel. Oh, I had to stop and think about what a kick wheel was. I know what a kick wheel is. A kick wheel which Fat had helped pay for as a present on her 18th birthday. When he fled to Canada, he took the pot with him, wrapped up in shorts, a different kind of pot, the clay pot, not the dope pot. When he fled to Canada, he took the pot with him, wrapped up in shorts, socks, and a shirt in his single suitcase. It looked like an ordinary pot. I think Max said something. Oh, very cool, Mike. Very cool. Maybe we can play your game live over an interactive chat someday. That might be somehow, I don't know. Might be possible. It looked like an ordinary pot, squat and light brown, with a small amount of blue glaze as a trim. Stephanie was not an expert potter. The pot was one of the first she threw, at least outside of her ceramics class in high school. Naturally, one of her first pots would go to Fat. She and he had a close relationship. When he'd get upset, Stephanie would quiet him down by supercharging him. This book's great. When he'd get upset, Stephanie would quiet him down by supercharging him with her hash pipe. The pot was unusual in one way, however. In it slumbered God. This book's amazing. He slumbered in the pot for a long time, for almost too long. There is a theory among some religions that God intervenes at the 11th hour. Maybe that is so, I couldn't say. In horse lover Fat's case, God waited until 3 minutes before 12. And even then, what he did was barely enough. Barely enough and virtually too late. You can't hold Stephanie responsible for that. She threw the pot, glazed it, and fired it as soon as she had the kick wheel. She did her best to help her friend Fat, who, like Gloria before him, was beginning to die. She helped her friend the way Fat had tried to help his friend. Only Stephanie did a better job. But that was the difference between her and Fat. In a crisis, she knew what to do. Fat did not. Therefore, Fat is alive today and Gloria is not. Fat had a better friend than Gloria had had. Perhaps he would have wanted it the other way around, but the option was not his. Yeah, I think so, Mac. I recognize that. Ah. Good choice. We do not serve up people to ourselves. The universe does. The universe makes certain decisions, and on the basis of those decisions, some people live and some people die. This is a harsh law, but every creature yields to it out of necessity. Fat got God, and Gloria Cudson got death. It is unfair, and Fat would be the first person to say so. Give him credit for that. After he had encountered God, Fat developed a love for him, which was not normal. It is not what is usually meant in saying that someone loves God. With Fat, it was an actual hunger. And stranger still, he explained to us that God had injured him, and still he yearned for him, like a drunk yearns for booze. God, he told us, had fired a beam of pink light directly at him, at his head, his eyes. Fat had been temporarily blinded, and his head had ached for days. It was easy, he said, to describe the beam of pink light. It was exactly what you'd get as a phosphine afterimage when a flashbulb has gone off in your face. You see, young ones, in the olden days, we didn't have smartphones with flash, the electronic flash. And the cameras used some sort of chemical, and it would go poof. And then that was it. That one flash bulb, poof, got burnt up. And then you had to buy another one and stick it in there. And some of them would do like 4. You could go, psh, psh, and pow. That's what that is. Back in my day, it was easy, he said, to describe the beam of pink light. It's exactly what you get as a phosphine afterimage when a flashbulb has gone off in your face. Fat was spiritually haunted by that color. Sometimes it showed up on a TV screen. He lived for that light, that one particular color. However, he could never really find it again. Nothing could generate that color for light but God. In other words, normal light did not contain that color. One time, Fat studied a color chart, a chart of the visible spectrum. The color was absent. He had seen a color which no one can see. It lay off the end. What comes after light in terms of frequency? Heat, radio waves? I should know, but I don't. Fat told me, I don't know how true this is, that in the solar spectrum, what he saw was above 700 millimicrons in terms of Fraunhofer lines, past B in the direction of A. Make of that what you will, which is nothing to me. I deem it a symptom of Fat's breakdown. People suffering nervous breakdowns often do a lot of research to find explanations for what they are undergoing. The research, of course, fails. It fails as far as we are concerned. But the unhappy fact is that it sometimes provides a spurious rationalization to the disintegrating mind, like Gloria's they. I looked up the Fraunhofer lines one time, and there is no A. The earliest letter indication that I could find is B. It goes from G to B, from ultraviolet to infrared. That's it. There is no more. What Fat saw, or thought he saw, was not light. After he returned from Canada, after he got God, Fat and I after he returned from Canada, after he got God, Fat and I spent a lot of time together. In the course of our going out at night, a regular event with us, cruising for action, seeing what was happening, we one time were in the process of parking my car when all at once a spot of pink light showed up on my left arm. I knew what it was, although I had never seen such a thing before. Someone had turned a laser beam on us. That's a laser, I said to Fat, who had seen it too, since the spot was moving all around onto telephone poles and the cement walls of the garage. Two teenagers stood at the far end of the street holding a square object between them. They built the goddamn thing, I said. The kids walked up to us grinning. They had built it, they told us, from a kit. We told them how impressed we were, and they walked off to spook someone else. That color pink? I asked Fat. He said nothing. But I had the impression that he was not being upfront with me. I had the feeling that I had seen his color. Why he would not say so, if such it was, I do not know. Maybe the notion spoiled a more elegant theory. The mentally disturbed do not employ the principle of scientific parsimony, the most simple theory to explain a given set of facts. They shoot for the Baroque. The cardinal point which Fat had made to us regarding his experience with the pink beam, which had injured and blinded him, was this. He claimed that instantly, as soon as the beam struck him, he knew things he had never known. He knew specifically that his 5-year-old son had an undiagnosed birth defect, and he knew what that birth defect consisted of, down to the anatomical details, down, in fact, to the medical specifics to relate to the doctor. I wanted to see how he told it to the doctor, how he explained knowing the medical details. His brain had trapped all the information on the beam of pink light had nailed him with. His brain had trapped all the information the beam of pink light had nailed with him. But how would he account for it? Fat later developed a theory that the universe is made out of information. He started keeping a journal. Had been, in fact, secretly doing so for some time. The furtive act of a deranged person. His encounter with God was all there on the pages in his, Fat's, not God's, handwriting. The term journal is mine, not Fat's. His term was, I've seen this word, exogenesis. Looks like, I don't know, exogenesis, something close to that. Oh, it's so nice that they define things for me. I appreciate you. A theological term meaning a piece of writing that explains or interprets a portion of Scripture. That's what it means. Fat believed that the information fired at him and progressively crammed into his head in successive waves had a holy origin, and hence should be regarded as a form of Scripture. even if it just applied to his son's undiagnosed right inguinal hernia, which had popped the hydrocele and gone down into the scrotal sac. This was the news Fat had for the doctor. The news turned out to be correct. Wow. Well, that would imply that he really had talked to God. The news turned out to be correct, as was confirmed when Fat's ex-wife took Christopher, ooh, that's me, by the way, in to be examined. Surgery was scheduled for the next day, which is to say as soon as possible. The surgeon carefully informed Fat and his ex-wife that Christopher's life had been in danger for years. He could have died during the night from a strangulated piece of his own gut. It was fortunate, the surgeon said, that they had found out about it. Thus again, Gloria's they, except that in this instance, the they actually existed. The surgery came off a success, and Christopher stopped being such a complaining child. There's a period there. I found an error in the book. The surgery came off as a success, and Christopher stopped, period, being such a complaining child. He had been in pain since birth. After that, Fat and his ex-wife took their son to another GP, one who had eyes, general practitioner. I don't know what that means. I guess they mean the other one couldn't see it. One of the paragraphs in Fat's journals impressed me enough to copy it out and include it here. It does not deal with right inguinal herons, but is more general in nature, expressing Fat's growing opinion that the nature of the universe is information. He had begun to believe this because for him, the universe, his universe, was indeed fast turning into information. Once God started talking to him, he never seemed to stop. I don't think they report that in the Bible. Oh, this is cool. You're awesome, man. Hey, let me interrupt myself just for a second. Let's see if I can break something here. Come here, bud. Come on. This was an awesome book that I read. I did not read it live, but I did review it somewhere on my channel. The Annotated American Gods. And when you read it, the original book is here, and then it's annotated where they have all these little extra bits of information. And this is a really fun book. And Mac is giving us that experience right here in the chat by giving us some annotations to go with the reading. That's awesome. The thing, because I didn't really research the book before I started reading. I am intrigued, though, is what Max said over here in the chat, is that this part of the novel is biographical. Dick went through this, including the thing about his son. Thank you, Mac. And so now I'm intrigued. Like if he saw a light and then it was revealed to him that his son had a hidden birth defect that then he went and told the doctor about, and then the doctor found it and no one knew it existed. Like, I would think after that a person would be sure there was God. It's going to be really fascinating. I'm doing some speculating at this point, but So don't listen to me. Once God started talking to him, he never seemed to stop. I don't think they report that in the Bible. Journal entry number 37. Thoughts of the brain are experienced by us as arrangements and rearrangements, change in a physical universe. But in fact, it is really information and information processing which we substantialize. We do not merely see its thoughts as objects, but rather as the movement, or more precisely, the placement of objects, how they become linked to one another. But we cannot read the patterns of the arrangement. We cannot extract the information in it. For example, it as information, which is what it is. The linking and relinking of objects by the brain is actually a language, but not a language like ours, since it is addressing itself and not someone or something outside of itself. That's a bit beyond me. Fatt kept working this particular theme over and over again, both in his journal and in his oral discourse to his friends. He felt sure the universe had begun to talk to him. Another entry in his journal reads, it's number 36, which, unless they're in reverse order, would be right before it. We should be able to hear this information, or rather narrative, as a neutral voice inside us. But something has gone wrong. All creation is a language and nothing but a language, which for some inexplicable reason we can't read outside and can't hear inside. So I say we have become idiots. Something has happened to our intelligence. My reasoning is this. Arrangement of part of the brain is a language. We are parts of the brain. Therefore, we are language. Why then do we not know this? Do we not even know what we are, let alone what the outer reality is of which we are parts? The origin of the word idiot is the word private. Each of us has become private and no longer shares the common thought of the brain, except at a subliminal level. Thus, our real life and purpose are conducted below our threshold of consciousness. To which I personally am tempted to say, speak for yourself, Fatt. Over a long period of time, or des arts of vast eternity, as he would have put it, Fatt developed a lot of unusual theories to account for his contact with God and the information derived therefrom. One in particular struck me as interesting, being different from the others. It amounted to a kind of mental capitulation by Fatt to what he was undergoing. This theory said that in actuality he wasn't experiencing anything at all. Sites of his brain were being selectively stimulated by tight energy beams emanating from far off, perhaps millions of miles away. These selective brain site stimulations generated in his head the impression for him that he was in fact seeing and hearing words, pictures, figures of people, printed pages, in short, God and God's message, or as Fatt liked to call it, the Logos. But this particular theory held, he really only imagined he experienced these things. They resembled holograms. What struck me was the oddity of a lunatic discounting his hallucinations in this sophisticated manner. Fat had intellectually dealt himself out of the game of madness while still enjoying its sights and sounds. In effect, he no longer claimed that what he experienced was actually there. Did this indicate he had begun to get better? Hardly. Now he held the view that they, or God, or someone owned a long-range, very tight, information-rich beam of energy focused on Fat's head. In this, I saw no improvement, but it did represent a change. Fat could now honestly discount his hallucinations, which meant he recognized them as such. But like Gloria, he now had a they. It seemed to me a Pyrrhic victory. Fat's life struck me as a litany of exactly that. For example, the way he had rescued Gloria. The exegesis Fat, which was like, I remember that word, we just had it a couple pages ago, was like commentary on scripture. The exegesis Fat labored on month after month struck me as a, the exegesis Fat labored on month after month struck me as a Pyrrhic victory if there ever was one. Now I'm going to go look up Pyrrhic victory real quick. They might define it later. I want to know what it means. It's capitalized. Pyrrr. One at too great a cost to have been worth it. Okay. So you won, but you lost anyway. You won at too great a cost. It's probably important I know what that means to follow the book. The exegesis Fat labored on month after month struck me as a Pyrrhic victory if there ever was one. In this case, an attempt by a beleaguered mind to make sense out of the inscrutable. Perhaps this is the bottom line to mental illness. Incomprehensible events occur. Your life becomes a bin for hoax-like fluctuations of what used to be reality. And not only that, as if that weren't enough, but you, like Fat, ponder forever over these fluctuations in an effort to order them into a coherency, when in fact the only sense they make is the sense you impose on them. Out of the necessity to restore everything into shapes and processes you can recognize. The first thing to depart in mental illness is the familiar. And what takes its place is bad news, because not only can you not understand it, but you also cannot communicate it to other people. The madness experiences something. The madman experiences something, but what it is or where it comes from, he does not know. Pretty sure this dude's read the Bible. That the phrasing on that is the wind bloweth, but where it comes to or where it goes, nobody knows. And there's something about the Holy Spirit and in comparison to the wind. The madman experiences something, but what it is or where it comes from, he does not know. Sounds parallel. In the midst of his shattered landscape, which one can trace back to Gloria Cudson's death, Fat imagined God had cured him. Once you notice Pyrrhic victories, they seem to abound. It reminds me of a girl I once knew who was dying of cancer. I visited her in the hospital and did not recognize her. Sitting up in her bed, she looked like a little old hairless man. From the chemotherapy, she had swallowed up a great grape. From the chemotherapy, she had swollen up like a great grape. From the cancer and the therapy, she had become virtually blind, nearly deaf, underwent constant seizures, and when I bent close to her to ask how she felt, she answered, when she could understand my question, "I feel that God is healing me." She had been religiously inclined and had planned to go into a religious order. On the metal stand beside her bed, she had, or someone had, laid out her rosary. In my opinion, a "fuck you, God" sign would have been appropriate. The rosary was not. Yet, in all fairness, I have to admit that God, or someone calling himself God, a distinction of mere semantics, had fired precious information at horse lover Fat's head by which their son Christopher's life had been saved. Some people God cures and some he slays. You know, I needed a break from reading the Bible and focusing on the Bible a lot. So I wanted to read some sci-fi. And it looks like that I'm not going to be able to escape the Bible because it's in here. And that's okay. It's an amazing book. Because I remember some other scripture that is, God killeth and God maketh alive. I don't know the verse. God cures and some he slays. Fat denies that God slays anyone. Fat says God never harms anyone. Illness, pain, and undeserved sufferings arise not from God, but from elsewhere. To which I say, how did this elsewhere arise? Did not God make Satan? Yeah. How did this elsewhere arise? Are there two gods, or is part of the universe out from under God's control? Fat used to quote Plato. In Plato's cosmology, nous, or mind, is persuading anarchy, or blind necessity, or blind chance, according to some experts, into submission. Nous happened to come along and to its surprise discovered blind chance. Chaos, in other words, onto which nous imposes order, although how this persuading is done, Plato nowhere says. According to Fat, my friend's cancer consisted of disorder not yet persuaded into sentient shape. Nous, or God, had not yet gotten around to her. To which I said, well, when he did get around to her, it was too late. Fat had no answer for that, at least in terms of oral rebuttal. Probably he sneaked off and wrote about it in his journal. He stayed up to 4 a.m. every night scratching away in his journal. I suppose all the secrets of the universe lay in it somewhere amid the rubble. We enjoyed baiting Fat into theological disputation because he always got angry, taking the point of view that what we said on the topic mattered, that the topic itself mattered. God bless the person that recommended this book. We enjoy baiting Fat into theological disputations because he always got angry, taking the point of view that what he said on the topic mattered, that the topic itself mattered. By now, he had become totally whacked out. We enjoyed introducing the discussion by way of some careless comment. Well, God give me a ticket to the freeway today, or something like that. Ensnared, Fat would leap into action. We whiled away the time pleasantly in this fashion, torturing Fat in a benign way. Aw, it's benign torturing. That's so sweet. After we left his place, we had the added satisfaction of knowing he was writing it all down in the journal. Of course, in the journal, his views always prevailed. Mac, you rascal. No need existed to bait Fat with idle questions such as, if God can do anything, can he create a ditch so wide he can't jump over it? We had plenty of real questions that Fat couldn't field. Our friend Kevin, my brother's name's Kevin. Our friend Kevin always began his attack one way. What about my dead cat? What about my dead cat? I stopped feeding my cat because God said he would feed everyone, and then my cat died. What about that? What about my dead cat? Kevin would say. Several years ago, Kevin had been out walking his cat in the early evening. Kevin, the fool, had not put the cat on a leash, and the cat had dashed out into the street and right into the front wheel of a passing car. When he picked up the remains of the cat, it was still alive, breathing in bloody foam. This book's dark. Breathing in bloody foam and staring at him in horror. Kevin liked to say, on Judgment Day, when I'm brought up before the great judge, I'm going to say, hold on a second, and then I'm going to whip out my dead cat from inside my coat. How do you explain this, God? How do you explain this? I'm going to ask. But by then, Kevin used to say the cat would be as stiff as a frying pan. He would hold out the cat by its handle, its tail, and wait for a satisfactory answer. Fat said, no answer would satisfy you. No answer would satisfy you. Wow, I've heard that too. I've asked some hard questions in another video. It's the video about the woodshed, how I made the woodshed. I asked some really hard questions. And I was told that although I could be given some cliche answers, the answers would not satisfy me. Fat said no answer would satisfy you. No answer you could give, Kevin sneered. Okay, so God saved your son's life. Why didn't he have my cat run out into the street 5 seconds later? 3 seconds later? Would that have been too much trouble for God? Of course, I suppose a cat doesn't matter. You know, Kevin, I pointed out one time, you could have put the cat on a leash. Well, only if he had free will. But if God planned everything out in advance, then that's not true. You know, Kevin, I pointed out one time, you could have put the cat on a leash. No, Fat said. He has a point. It's been bothering me. For him, the cat is a symbol of everything about the universe he doesn't understand. I understand fine, Kevin said bitterly. I just think it's fucked. God is either powerless, stupid, or he doesn't give a shit. Or all three. He's evil, dumb, and weak. I think I'll start my own exegesis. But God doesn't talk to you, I said. You know who talks to horse? Kevin said. Who really talks to horse in the middle of the night? People from the planet Stupid. Horse, what's the wisdom of God called again? Saint what? Hagia Sophia, Horse said cautiously. Kevin said, how do you say Hagia Stupid? Saint Stupid? Hagia Moron, Horse said. He always defended himself by giving in. Hair in my mouth. like that. Yeah, I 100% agree, Mac. 100% agree. This is true, Joy. Yeah. I'm not even high. I'm having a blast. Moron is a Greek word like hagia. I came across it when I was looking up the spelling of oxymoron, except that the on suffix is the neuter ending, I said. That gives you an idea of where our theological arguments tended to wind up. Three malinformed people disagreeing with one another. We also had David, our Roman Catholic friend, and the girl who had been dying of cancer, Sherry. She had gone into remission and the hospital had discharged her. To some extent, her hearing and vision were permanently impaired, but otherwise she seemed to be fine. Fad, of course, used this as an argument for God and God's healing love, as did David, and of course Sherry herself. Kevin saw her remission as a miracle of radiation therapy and chemotherapy and luck. Also, he confided to us, the remission was temporary. At any time, Sherry could get sick again. Kevin hinted darkly that the next time she got sick, there wouldn't be a remission. We sometimes thought that he hoped so, since it would confirm his view of the universe. It was a mainstay of Kevin's bag of verbal tricks that the universe consisted of misery and hostility and would get you in the end. He looked at the universe the way most people regard an unpaid bill. Eventually, they will force payment. The universe reeled you out, let you flop and thrash, and then reeled you in. Kevin waited constantly for this to begin with him, with me, with David, and especially with Sherry. As to horse lover Fat, Kevin believed that the line hadn't been paid out in years. Fat had long been in the part of the cycle where they reel you back in. He considered Fat not just potentially doomed, but doomed in fact. Fat had the good sense not to discuss Gloria Cudson and her death in front of Kevin. Had he done so, Kevin would add her to his dead cat. He would be talking about whipping her out from under his coat on Judgment Day along with the cat. Being a Catholic, David always traced everything wrong back to man's free will. This used to annoy me. I once asked him if Sherry getting cancer consisted of an instance of free will, knowing as I did that David kept up with all the latest news in the field of psychology and would make the mistake of claiming that Sherry had subconsciously wanted to get cancer and so had shut down her immune system, a view floating around in advanced psychological circles at the time. Sure enough, David fell for it and said so. Then why did she get well, I asked. Did she subconsciously want to get well? David looked perplexed. If he consigned her illness to her own mind, he was stuck with having to consign her remission to mundane and not supernatural causes. God had nothing to do with it. What C.S. Lewis would say, David began, which at once angered Fat, who was present. It maddened him when David turned to C.S. Lewis to bolster his straight down the pipe orthodoxy. Maybe Sherry overrode God, I said. God wanted her sick and she fought to get well. The thrust of David's impending argument would of course be that Sherry had neurotically gotten cancer due to being fucked up, but God had stepped in and saved her. I had turned it around in anticipation. No, Fat said, it's the other way around, like when he cured me. Fortunately, Kevin was not present. He did not consider Fat cured, nor did anyone else. And anyway, God didn't do it. that is a logic which Freud attacks, by the way. The two proposition self-canceling structure. Freud considered this structure a revelation of rationalization. Someone is accused of stealing a horse, to which he replies, I don't steal horses. And anyhow, you have a crummy horse. If you ponder the reasoning of this, you can see the actual thought process behind it. You know, I read an argumentation recently where someone did make something very similar to this. I made some factual claim, and then they disputed my factual claim with two rebuttals that weren't facts. Well, they weren't relevant. Freud considered this structure a revelation of rationalization. Someone is accused of stealing a horse, to which he replies, I don't steal horses. And anyhow, you have a crummy horse. If you ponder the reasoning in this, you can see the actual thought process behind it. The second statement does not reinforce the first. It only looks like it does. In terms of our perpetual theological disputations, would be a good channel name for Bible debate channel, perhaps. Perpetual theological disputations, brought on by Fat's supposed encounter with the divine. The two propositions self-canceling structure would appear like this. God does not exist, and anyhow, he's stupid. A careful study of Kevin's cynical rantings reveal this structure at every turn. David continually quoted C.S. Lewis. Kevin contradicted himself logically in his zeal to defame God. Obscure references to information fired into his head by a beam of pink light. Sherry, who had suffered dreadfully, wheezed out pious mummeries. I switched my position according to who I was talking to at the time. I switched my position according to who I was talking to at the time? None of us had a grip on the situation, but we did have a lot of free time to waste in this fashion. By now, the epic of drug taking had ended, and everyone had begun casting about for a new obsession. For us, the new obsession, thanks to Fat, was theology. A favorite antique quotation of Fat's goes, and can I think the great Jehovah sleeps like Shemos and such fabled deities? Ah, no, heaven never heard my thoughts and wrote them down. It must be so. Fat doesn't like to quote the rest of it. 'Tis this that racks my brain and pours into my breast 1,000 pains that lash me into madness. It's from an aria by Handel. Fat and I used to listen to my Sephirim LP of Richard Lewis singing it, deeper and deeper still. Once I told Fat that another aria on the record described his mind perfectly. All right, I have to go look up what an aria is, because it's a four-letter word that I don't know. I like to know four-letter words. Aria. A long accompanied song for a solo voice. A long accompanied song for a solo voice. Typically one in an opera. All right. Whatever. Once I told Fat that another aria on the record described his mind perfectly. Which aria? Fat said guardedly. Total Eclipse. I answered. Total eclipse! No sun, no moon, all dark amidst the blaze of noon. Oh, glorious light! No cheering ray, to glad my eyes with welcome day. Why thus deprived my prime decree? Why thus deprived thy prime decree? Sun, moon, and stars are dark to me. To which Fat said, the opposite is true in my case. I am illuminated by holy light fired at me from another world. I see what no other man sees. He had a point there. Wow. All right. Stretch break, and then we're going to read chapter 3. And then that'll probably be it for the day. I should have left Revelation 1 up because it's got the blessed is he that readeth and they that hear the words of this prophecy. I should have left that up. All right, I am going to stretch. I'm ranting. I'm still here though. I'm just stretching off camera, and then we're going to read chapter 3. And then I'm going to do something else with the rest of my day. Chapter 3 of Philip K. Dick's VALIS. A question we had to learn to deal with during the dope decade was, how do you break the news to someone that his brains are fried? This issue had now passed over into horse lover Fat's theological world as a problem for us, his friends, to fill. It would have been simple to tie the two together in Fat's case. The dope he did during the 60s had pickled his head on into the 70s. If I could have arranged it so that I could think so I would have. What? If I could have arranged it so that I could think so I would have. I like solutions that answer a variety of problems simultaneously. But I really couldn't think so. Fat hadn't done psychedelics, at least not to any real extent. Once, in 1964, when Sandow's LSD-25 could still be acquired, especially in Berkeley, Fat had dropped one huge hit of it and had reached back in time, or had shot forward in time, or up outside of time. Anyhow, he had spoken in Latin and believed that the dies ira, the day of wrath, had come. He could hear God thumping tremendously in fury. For 8 hours, Fat had prayed and whined in Latin. Later, he claimed that during his trip, he could only think in Latin and talk in Latin. He had found a book with a Latin quotation in it and could read it as easily as he normally read English. Well, perhaps the etiology of his later God madness lay there. His brain in 1964 liked the acid trip and taped it for future replay. On the other hand, this line of reasoning merely relegates the question back to 1964. As far as I can determine, the ability to read, think, and speak in Latin is not normal for an acid trip. Fat knows no Latin. He can't speak it now. He couldn't speak it before he dropped the huge hit of Sandow's LSD-25. Later, when his religious experiences began, he found himself thinking in a foreign language which he did not understand. He had understood his own Latin in 64. Phonetically, he had written down some of the words, remembered at random. To him, they constituted no language at all, and he hesitated to show anyone what he had put on paper. His wife, his later wife Beth, had taken a year of Greek in college, and she recognized what Fat had written down inaccurately as Koine Greek, or at least Greek of some sort, Attic or Koni. The Greek word Koni simply means common. By the time of the New Testament, the Koni had become the lingua franca of the Middle East, replacing Aramaic, which had previously supplanted Akkadian. I know these things because I am a professional writer, and it is essential that I possess a scholarly knowledge about languages. The New Testament manuscript survived in Koine Greek, although probably Q, the source of the synoptics, had been written in Aramaic, which is in fact a form of Hebrew. Jesus spoke Aramaic. Thus, when horse lover Fat began to think, cool, Mac. I'm sanding now. The New Testament manuscript survived in Koine Greek, although probably Q. Interesting, this Q here. The source of the synoptics had been written in Aramaic, which is in fact a form of Hebrew. Jesus spoke Aramaic. Thus, when horse lover Fat began to think in Koine Greek, he was thinking in the language which St. Luke and St. Paul, who were close friends, had used, at least to write with. The Koine looks funny when written down because the scribes left no space between the words. This can lead to a lot of peculiar translations, since the translator gets to put the spaces wherever he feels appropriate, or in fact, wherever he wants. Take this English instance. God is nowhere versus God is now here. Actually, these matters were pointed out to me by Beth, who never took Fat's religious experiences seriously until she saw him write down phonetically several words of the Koine, which she knew had no experience with and could not recognize even as a genuine language. What Fat claimed was, well, Fat claimed plenty. I must not start any sentence with what Fat claimed was. During the years, outright years, that he labored on his exegesis, Fat must have come up with more theories than there are stars in the universe. Every day he developed a new one, more cunning, more exciting, and more fucked. God, however, remained a constant theme. Fat ventured away from belief in God the way a timid dog I once owned had ventured off its front lawn. He, both of them, would go first one step, then another, then perhaps a third, and then turn tail and run frantically back to familiar territory. God, to Fat, constituted a territory which he had staked out. Unfortunately for him, following the initial experience, Fat could not find his way back to that territory. They ought to make it a binding clause that if you find God, you get to keep him. Wow. You know, this is such a universal thing. It's cool that some dude wrote about it in the 70s or 80s. People wrote about it every century all the way back through time, I think, my opinion. But I lost my track of thought. I was just to say such a universal. I know what I was talking about. They ought to make it a binding clause that if you find God, you get to keep him. You know, I think about stories I've heard about people that were sure God existed and then God slipped out of their fingers, and the emotional turmoil that causes. I feel for those people. For Fat, finding God, if indeed he did find God, became ultimately a bummer, a constantly diminishing supply of joy, sinking lower and lower like the contents of a bag of uppers. Who deals God? Fat knew that the churches couldn't help, although he did consult with one of David's priests. It didn't work. Nothing worked. Kevin suggested dope. Being involved with literature, I recommended he read the English 17th century minor metaphysical poets such as Vaughan and Herbert. He knows he hath a home, but scarce knows where. He says it is so far that he hath quite forgotten how to go there. Which is from Vaughan's poem, Man. As nearly as I could make out, Fat had devolved to the level of those poets and had, for these times, become an anachronism, which I think is someone out of their time. The universe has a habit of deleting anachronisms. I saw this coming for Fat if he didn't get his shit together. Of all the suggestions given to Fat, the one that seemed most promising came from Sherry, who still lingered on with us in a state of remission. What you should do, she told Fat during one of his darker hours, is get into studying the characteristics of T-34. Fat asked what that was. It turned out that Sherry had read a book on Russian armor during World War II. The T-34 tank had been the Soviet Union's salvation, and thereby the salvation of all the Allied powers, and by extension, horse lover Fat's, since without the T-34, he would be speaking not English or Latin, or Korean, but German. The T-34, Sherry explained, moved very rapidly. Oh, hi, boo-boo. Hey, boo-boo, boo-boo. The T-34, Sherry explained, moved very rapidly. At Kursk, they knocked out even Porsche elephants. You have no idea what they did to the 4th Panzer Army. She then started drawing sketches of the situation at Kursk in 1943, giving figures. Fad and the rest of us were mystified. This was a side of Sherry we hadn't known. It took Zuko himself to turn the tide against the Panzers, Sherry wheezed on. Vat Udom screwed up. He was later murdered by pro-Nazi partisans. Now consider the Tiger tank the Germans had and their Panthers. She showed us photographs of various tanks and related with relish how General Konyov had successfully crossed the Dniester and Prut rivers by March 26. Basically, Sherry's idea had to do with bringing Fat's mind down from the cosmic and the abstract to the particular. She had hatched out the practical notion that nothing is more real than a large World War II Soviet tank. She wanted to provide an antitoxin to Fat's madness. However, her recitation, complete with maps and photographs, only served to remind him of the night he and Bob have seen the movie Platoon before attending Gloria's graveside service. Naturally, Sherry had not known about that. I think he should take up sewing, Kevin said. Don't you have a sewing machine, Sherry? Teach him how to use it. Sherry, showing a high degree of stubbornness, continued. Sherry, showing a high degree of stubbornness, continued. The tank battles at Kursk involved over 4,000 armored vehicles. It was the greatest battle of armor in history. Everyone knows about Stalingrad, but nobody knows about Kursk. The real victory by the Soviet Union took place at Kursk. When you consider, Kevin, David interrupted, what the Germans should have done was show the Russians a dead cat and ask them to explain it. That would have stopped the Soviet offensive right there, I said. Zhukov would still be trying to account for the cat's death. To Kevin, Sherry said, in view of the stunning victory by the good side at Kursk, how can you complain about one cat? There's something in the Bible about falling sparrows, Kevin said. About his eye being on them. That's what's wrong with God. He only has one eye. Did God win the battle at Kursk? I said to Sherry. That must be news to the Russians, especially the ones who built the tanks and drove them and got killed. Sherry said patiently, God uses us as instruments through which he works. Well, Kevin said, regarding horse, God has a defective instrument, or maybe they're both defective, like an 80-year-old lady driving a Pinto with a drop-in gas tank. My parents owned a Pinto. I rode in the back of a Pinto for a while. The Germans would have had to hold up Kevin's dead cat. Fat said, not just any dead cat. All Kevin cares about is that one cat. That cat, Kevin said, did not exist during World War II. Did you grieve over him then? Fat asked. How could I? Kevin said. He didn't exist. Then his condition was the same as now, Fat said. Wrong, Kevin said. Wrong in what way? Fat said. How did his non-existence then differ from his non-existence now? Kevin's got the corpse now, David said, to hold up. That was the whole point of the cat's existence. He lived to become a corpse by which Kevin could refute the goodness of God. Kevin, Fat said, who created your cat? God did, Kevin said. So God created a Kevin, Fat said, who created your cat? God did, Kevin said. So God created a refutation of his own goodness? Sherry said, by your logic. God is stupid, Kevin said. We have a stupid deity. I've said that before. Sherry said, does it take much skill to create a cat? You just need two cats, Kevin said. One male and one female. But he could obviously see where she was leading him. He paused, grinning. Okay, it takes skill. If you presume purpose in the universe. You don't see any purpose, Sherry said. Hesitating, Kevin said. Living creatures have purpose. Who puts the purpose in them, Sherry said. They, again, Kevin hesitated. They are their purpose. They and their purpose can't be separated. So an animal is an expression of purpose, Sherry said. So there is purpose in the universe, in small parts of it, and unpurpose gives rise to purpose. Kevin eyed her, bite me. Actually, it's different. Kevin eyed her, eat shit, she said. He said. In my opinion, Kevin's cynical stance had done more to ratify Fat's madness than any other single factor. Any other, that is, than the original cause, whatever that might have been. Kevin had become the unintentional instrument of that original cause, a realization which had not escaped Fat. In no way, shape, or form did Kevin represent a viable alternative to mental illness. His cynical grin had about it the grin of death. He grinned like a triumphant skull. Kevin lived to defeat life. It originally amazed me that Fat would put up with Kevin, but later I could see why. Every time Kevin tore down Fat's system of delusion, mocked them and lampooned them, I could swap out some of these names for other names and it would be just as true. I'm not going to, though. It originally amazed me that Fat would put up with Kevin, but later I could see why. Every time Kevin tore down Fat's system of delusions, mocked them and lampooned them, Fat gained strength. If mockery were the only antidote to his malady, he was palpably better off as he stood. Whacked out as he was, Fat could see this. Actually, were the truth known, Kevin could see it too. But he evidently had a feedback loop in his head that caused him to step up the attacks rather than abandon them. Whacked out as he was, Fat could see this. Actually, were the truth known, Kevin could see it too. But he evidently had a feedback loop in his head that caused him to step up the attacks rather than abandon them. Wow. There's some dense nuggets of reality here, not just the reality of this book that this man wrote in the early 80s about the 70s, but also I'm finding some reality here in my life and some people I hang out with. It's insane. It's almost like there's nothing new under the sun. I'm going to read that paragraph one more time and annoy you people, and then I'll continue on. Kevin lived to defeat life. It originally amazed me that Fat would put up with Kevin, but later I could see why. Every time Kevin tore down Fat's system of delusion, mocked them and lampooned them, Fat gained strength. If mockery were the only antidote to his malady, he was palpably better off as he stood. Whacked out as he was, Fat could see this. Actually, were the truth known, Kevin could see it too. But he evidently had a feedback loop in his head that caused him to step up the attacks rather than abandon them. His failure reinforced his efforts. So the attacks grew and Fat's strength grew. It resembled a Greek myth. In horse lover Fat's exegesis, the theme of this issue is put forth over and over again. Fat believed that a streak of the irrational permeated the entire universe all the way up to God, or the ultimate mind, which lay behind it. He wrote, number 38, from loss and grief, the mind has become deranged. Therefore, we, as part of the universe, the brain, are partly deranged. Obviously, he had extrapolated into cosmic proportions from his own loss of Gloria. Number 35, the mind is not talking to us, but by means of us. Its narrative passes through us, and its sorrow infuses us irrationally. As Plato discerned, there is a streak of the irrational in the world's soul. Entry number 32 gives more on this. The changing information which we experience as world is an unfolding narrative. The changing information which we experience as world is an unfolding narrative. It tells about the death of a woman. This woman, who died long ago, was one of the primordial twins. She was one half of the design syzygy. The purpose of the narrative is the recollection of her and her death. The mind does not wish to forget her. Thus, the ratiocination of the brain consists of a permanent record of her existence, and, if read, will be understood this way. All the information possessed by the brain, experienced by us as the arranging and rearranging of physical objects, is an attempt at this preservation of hers. Stones and rocks and sticks and amoebae are traces of her. The record of her existence and the passing is ordered onto the record of her existence and passing is ordered onto the meanest level of reality by the suffering mind which is now alone. If, in reading this, you cannot see that Fat is writing about himself, then you understand nothing. I probably understand nothing. On the other hand, I am not denying that Fat was totally whacked out. He began to decline when Gloria phoned him, and he continued to decline forever and ever. Unlike Sherry and her cancer, Fat experienced no remission. Encountering God was not a remission, but probably it wasn't a worsening, despite Kevin's cynical views. You cannot say that an encounter with God is to mental illness what death is to cancer. The logical outcome of a deteriorating illness process. The theological technical term, not psychiatric, is theophany. Theophany. A theophany consists of a self-disclosure by the divine. Yeah. It does not consist of something the percipient does. It consists of something that the divine, the God or gods, the higher power does. Moses did not create the burning bush. Elijah on Mount Horeb did not generate the low murmuring voice. How are we to distinguish a genuine theophany from a mere hallucination on the part of the percipient? The voice tells him something he does not know. Yeah, like, how could Abraham have distinguished between a hallucination in his head telling him to kill his son and an actual theophany from God, a telephone call from God telling him to kill his son? How could the prophet in 1 Samuel 15:3 distinguish between a hallucination in his head telling the king to tell the soldiers to kill the babies versus actual God telling the prophet to tell the king to kill the babies? Like, how would you distinguish between a hallucination telling you to do something that you think is wrong and God telling you to do something you think is wrong? Apologize for the preaching. I think Max said something. Let me see what he said. Oh, that's cool, Mac, that you thought it was me reading the book. I may have to rewind this later and see if it came across that way. Very cool. I set the book down. Well, because you might be like, have your headphones in doing your sanding and stuff, so you can't see me, which is, there's nothing to see. But a viewer might have noticed I set the book down. Whatever, man. You're awesome, Mac. I didn't want to imply anything otherwise. I lost my place because I went off on my little preaching there. The technical term, theological technical term, not psychiatric, is theophany. A theophany consists of a self-disclosure by the divine. It does not consist of something the percipient does. It consists of something the divine, the God or gods, the higher power does. Moses did not create the burning bush. Elijah on Mount Horeb did not generate the low, murmuring voice. How are we to distinguish a genuine theophany from a mere hallucination on the part of the percipient? If the voice tells him something he does not know and could not know, then perhaps we are dealing with the genuine thing and not the spurious. Perhaps he knew about the near strangulated hernia unconsciously and simply did not want to face it. There exists too a mechanism by which he might have known the Keone. It had to do with phylogenetic memory, the experience of which has been reported by Jung. He terms it the collective or racial unconscious, the ornogeny. That is, the individual recapitulates the phylogeny, that is, the species. And since this is generally accepted, then maybe here lies a basis for Fat's mind serving up a language spoken 2,000 years ago. If there were phylogenetic memories buried in the individual human mind, this is what you might expect to find. Oh, the home kitty. If there were phylogenetic memories buried in the individual human mind, this is what you might expect to find. But Jung's concept is speculative. No one really has been able to verify it. If you grant the possibility of a divine entity, you cannot deny it the power of self-disclosure. Obviously, any entity being worthy of our term God would possess, without effort, that ability. The real question, as I see it, is not why theophanies, but why aren't there more? The key concept to account for this is the idea of the deus apoconsis, the hidden, concealed, secret, or unknown God. For some reason, Jung regards this as a notorious idea. But if God exists, he must be a deus abacondus, with the exception of his rare theophanies, or else he does not exist at all. The latter view makes more sense, except for the theophanies, rare though they may be. All that is required is one absolutely verified theophany, and the latter view is voided. All that is required is one absolutely verified theophany. Yep, that's true. The vividness of the impression which a supposed theophany makes on the percipient is no proof of authenticity, nor really is group perception. As Spinoza, I've heard the name Spinoza before, as Spinoza supposed, the entire universe may be one theophany, but then again, the universe may not exist at all, as the Buddhist idealists decided. Any given alleged theophany may be a fake, because anything may be a fake, from stamps to fossil skulls to black holes in space. That the entire universe, as we experience it, could be a forgery is an ideal best expressed by Heraclitus. Once you have taken this notion or doubt into your head, you're wow, here's my second error in this book. You arc ready to deal with the issue of God. That should be an E, not a C. I'm not sure that you'll even be able to see it. But one of the things I seem to be good at is spotting contradictions and errors. I found a misplaced period in this book, and here it says, you arc ready to deal with the issue of God. But it's supposed to be you are. They got a C instead of an E. Roar! I wonder if there's any other errors in any other books that get rewritten over and over again. It is necessary to have understanding, nous, in order to be able to interpret the evidence of eyes and ears. The step from the obvious to the latent truth is like the translation of utterances in a language which is foreign to most men. Heraclitus, in fragment 56, says that men, in regard to knowledge of perceptible things, are the victims of illusion much as Homer was. To reach the truth from the appearances, it is necessary to interpret, to guess the riddle. But though this seems to be within the capacity of men, it is something most men never do. Heraclitus is very vehement in his attacks on the foolishness of ordinary men and of what passes for knowledge among them. They are compared to sleepers in private worlds of their own. Thus says Edward Hussey, lecturer in ancient philosophy at the University of Oxford and a fellow of All Souls College, in his book, The Pre-Socratics, published by Charles Scribner's Son, New York, 1972, pages 37 to 38. In all my reading Horse Lover Fat has, never found anything more significant as an insight into the nature of reality. In fragment 123, Heraclitus says, the nature of things is in the habit of concealing itself. And in fragment 54, he says, the latent structure is master of obvious structure. To which Edward Hussey adds, consequently, he, Heraclitus, necessarily agreed that reality has to some extent hidden. So if reality is to some extent hidden, then what is meant by theophany? Because a theophany is an inbreaking of God, an inbreaking which amounts to an invasion of our world. And yet our world is only seeming. It is only obvious structure, which is under the mastery of an unseen latent structure. Horse Lover Fat would like you to consider this above all other things. Because if Heraclitus is correct, there is in fact no reality but that of theophanies. The rest is illusion, in which case Fat alone among us comprehends the truth. And Fat, starting with Gloria's phone call, is insane. Insane people, psychologically defined, not legally defined, are not in touch with reality. Okay, I was having trouble following that. Now I understand. Insane people, psychologically defined, not legally defined, are not in touch with reality. Horse Lover Fat is insane. Therefore, he is not in touch with reality. Entry number 30 from his Exegesias. I should probably learn how to pronounce that word quickly. I could cut these videos down by 20% because he uses this word a lot. The phenomenal world does not exist. It is a hypostasis of the information processed by the mind. Number 35. The mind is not talking to us by means of us. Its narrative passes through us, and its sorrow infuses us irrationally. I already read this number. It appears someplace else. As Plato discerned, there is a streak of the irrational in the world soul. In other words, the universe itself, the mind behind it, is insane. Therefore, someone in touch with reality is, by definition, in touch with the insane, infused by the irrational. In essence, Fat monitored his own mind and found it defective. He then, by use of that mind, monitored outer reality, that which is called the macrocosm. He found it defective as well. As the Hermetic philosophers stipulated, the macrocosm and the microcosm mirror each other faithfully. Fat, using a defective instrument, swept out a defective subject, and from this sweep got back the report that everything was wrong. It's good stuff. Back up one paragraph just because it's pretty impactful. In essence, Fat monitored his own mind and found it defective. He then, by use of that mind, monitored outer reality, that which is called the macrocosm. He found it defective as well. As the Hermetic philosophers stipulated, the macrocosm and the microcosm mirror each other faithfully. Fat, using a defective instrument, swept out a defective subject, and from this sweep got back the report that everything was wrong. Hi, Aster. Thanks for stopping in again. It's so awesome. I'm going to finish this chapter, and that'll be it for the day. Enjoy your nap. Naps are awesome. They're of God. And in addition, there was no way out. The interlocking between the defective instrument and the defective subject produced another perfect Chinese finger trap. Caught in his own maze, like Daedalus, who built a labyrinth for King Minos of Crete and then fell into it and couldn't get out, presumably Daedalus is still there, and so are we. The only difference between us and horse lover Fat is that Fat knows his situation and we do not. Therefore, Fat is insane, and we are normal. They are compared to sleepers in private worlds of their own, as Hussey put it. And he would know. He is the foremost living authority on ancient Greek thought, with the possible exception of Francis Cornfield. And it is Cornford who says that Plato believed that there was an element of the irrational in the world soul. There is no route out of the maze. The maze shifts as you move through it because it is alive. I move only a little, yet I already seem to have gone far. You see, my son, here time turns into space. The whole landscape becomes indistinct. A forest ebbs out and a wall of rough rock ebbs in, through which can be seen a gateway. The two men passed through the gateway. What happened to the forest? The two men did not really move. They did not really go anywhere. And yet they were not now where they originally were. Here, time turns into space. Wagner began Parsifal in 1845. He died in 1873, long before Hermann Minkowski postulated four-dimensional space-time, 1908. The source basis for Parsifal consisted of Celtic legends and Wagner's research into Buddhism for his never-written opera about the Buddha to be called The Victors. Where did Richard Wagner get the notion that time could turn into space? Yeah, an elephant of the irrational in the world. No, that was a Freudian slip. And if time can turn into space, can space turn into time? In Mircea Eliade's book, Myth and Reality, one chapter is titled Time Can Be Overcome. It is a basic purpose of mythic ritual and sacrament to overcome time. Horselover Fat found himself thinking in a language used 2,000 years ago, the language in which St. Paul wrote. Here, time turns into space. Fat told me another feature of his encounter with God. All of a sudden, did I miss something? Oh, in a small letter. All of a sudden, the landscape of California, USA, 1974, ebbed out, and the landscape of Rome of the 1st century CE ebbed in. He experienced a superimposition of the two for a while, like techniques familiar in movies, in photography. Why? How? God explained many things to Fat, but he never explained that, except for this cryptic statement. It is journal listing number 3. He causes things to look different so it would appear time has passed. Who is he? Are we to infer that time has not in fact passed? And did it ever pass? Was there once a real time and for that matter a real world, and now there is counterfeit time in a counterfeit world? Like a sort of bubble growing and looking different, but actually static? Horselover Fat saw fit to list this statement early in his journal, or exegesis, or whatever he calls it. Journal listing number 4. The next entry goes, matter is plastic in the face of mind. Is any world out there at all? For all intents and purposes, Gurnesmaz and Parsifal stand still, and the landscape changes. So they become located in another space, a space which formerly had not been experienced as time. Fat thought in a language of 2,000 years ago and saw the ancient world appropriate to that language. The inner contents of his mind matched his perceptions of the outer world. Some kind of logic seemed involved here. Perhaps a time dysfunction took place. But why didn't his wife Beth experience it too? She was living with him when he had his encounter with the divine. For her, nothing changed, except, as she told me, she heard strange popping sounds like something overloaded. Objects pushed to the point where they exploded, as if jammed with too much energy. Both Fat and his wife told me another aspect of those days in March 1974. Their pet animals underwent a peculiar metamorphosis. The animals looked more intelligent and more peaceful. That is, until both animals died of massive malignant tumors. Both Fat and his wife told me one thing about their pets, which has stuck in my mind ever since. During that time, the animals seemed to be trying to communicate with them, trying to use language. That cannot be written off as part of Fat's psychosis. That and the animal's death. The first thing that went wrong, according to Fat, had to do with the radio. Listening to it one night, he had not been able to sleep for a long time. He heard the radio saying hideous words, sentences which it could not be saying. Beth, being asleep, missed that. So that could have been Fat's mind breaking down. But then his psyche was disintegrating at a terrible velocity. Mental illness is not funny. That is the end of chapter 3 of Philip K. Dick's VALIS. We will be picking this book up sometime in the future whenever I feel like it. In the near future, but in the future. I'll read the rest of it out loud because why not? I can listen to it in the nursing home when I'm old. It'll be nice. Thank you to the people that stopped by. Aster, it was nice to chat with you. It says you've made comments on my videos. I've seen some of your videos. And SVT Drew, and I remember SVT Drew stood for some sort of service vehicle team or something. I'd have to scroll back. I am curious. Okay, I'm going to go look because I want to remember that. Way up at the top. There it is. SVT is Special Vehicle Team. It was Ford's performance brand in the early 2000s. Cool. I don't know why I thought that was sergeant, and then in my mind you're like military, and it's going to be hard to divorce that. It's okay though. I appreciate everyone that stopped by. Especially Mac. Yes, I'm going to get some fresh air. Bye, Mac. I'm going to pause. I'm going to stop the stream. It's all done. See you later, friends.